We have representatives of the Honorary Mention department of the Hybrid Arts category for 2011, and the work of Evelina Domnitch and Dimitry Gelfand, miscellaneous, omniverse. And Evelina and Dimitry create sensory immersions environments that merge physics, chemistry, and computer science with uncanny philosophical practices. Current findings, particularly in the mesoscopic domain, are employed by the artists to investigate questions of perception and perpetuality. And the interesting thing about their work is that they take this idea of looking at what contemporary science have to tell us about the world and make it more than just an exercise in the illustrating science. The performances and their performance is on Monday, what time again? 8 o'clock. And I urge any of you who's going to be around to go and see this performance. It's an amazing, immersive and sensory experience. So please, 20 minutes. Please welcome them.
Well, I would like to thank Ars Electronica for letting us speak here in front of you. We are the only people who got the honorary mention, who got this privilege, and we also get to perform at the Music Awards ceremony, and we are from Hybrid Art, so we truly feel very privileged.
So we're going to shift the discussion from social and biological matters to the far-fetched domains of theoretical and experimental physics. Just an important background note, most of the pioneers as well as current experts in the field have claimed that it is not possible to explain, let alone imagine, quantum phenomena. And Evelina and I would like to suggest quite the contrary, that it is possible not only to imagine, but to directly and sensuously experience quantum behavior.
And I'm not sure if Roger Molina is here, but I would like to disagree. I love Roger, we are working together, but I would like to disagree with his statement that the way we are built, we are so imperfectly built, we cannot understand how the world works. And you can see in the previous slide this little logo. It's the logo of our laboratory, which is called Optophonical Laboratory, which is a production self-organizing structure run by artists where we explore these issues of, and in the course of this research we understood how fine and how refined our senses are. Our eyes can perceive up to 7 photons, and we can smell individual molecules. Our sensory system is extraordinarily well tailored, and our brain has liquid architecture, so we can adapt to such strange perceptions. We can perceive things that maybe we don't notice or can't perceive now, but with practice, training, and adaptation we can do it. And we would never think we could work in the realm of quantum phenomena. After we did one of our first works that was quite successful and was presented here at Ars, which is called Camera Lucida, where we explored the phenomenon of sonoluminescence. It's a very exotic phenomena when light is produced by sound waves traveling in liquid, by ultrasonic waves, and it's almost imperceptible, and we managed to make it into a public installation where people could see this phenomenon, for all of them, for the first time in their lives. And during work on this piece, we could experience in real time, without mediation of computers, simulations, the information coming from nano realm. And it is something like looking at the stars, and you look into a totally different scale, but you get sensory information. And Also, in a lot of in the projects presented here, which I truly enjoyed the presentations, and I'm very grateful to be part of this illustrious crew. But also, Roger said that we are very good sense makers, and it looks like artists try to make sense of a lot of things instead of experience them. And we have a little bit different angle. We want to sharpen the senses. We want to work with the senses. We want to refine them. We don't want to give it away. And also working with Camera Lucida, we found out about this creature called the mantis shrimp, who has the most incredible vision in the animal kingdom, which, well, he has 16 different receptors for perceiving colors. And this creature can see 2 different types of light polarization. It can see in infrared and ultraviolet spectrum, and scientists design hypersensing systems based on senses of this animal.
And it also happens to create sonoluminescence with its claws. When the acoustic wave from the clenching of its claw occurs, a microbubble of air in the seawater collapses, and a flash of light emanates therefrom. So a few years ago, a mind-boggling phenomenon was discovered that when droplets of a viscous liquid fall onto a bath of the same liquid, instead of coalescing, as one might expect, because this bath of liquid is vertically sonicated from below, the droplets actually levitate or bounce on the air-oil interface. And when this was first discovered, there was no talk of any kind of particle wave duality of any kind of quantum behavior, but that crept into the picture quite recently as well.
And after we performed this piece a couple of times, we were told by Alvaro Casanelli, who is also not a stranger at Ars Electronica, and he is a physicist and an artist. He told us that some of his French scientist friends wrote some papers about this phenomena, and the papers were about the subject, how this particular system of this droplet on a sonicated liquid is the largest macroscopic system that behaves in a quantum way. And this is a scientific paper they published in Nature, and it's very legitimate scientific stuff. And the most wonderful thing for us after we've been developing this work, and of course this is a topic that really close to our heart, the mesoscopic domain, the domain where quantum and classical system intersects. And of course this is a very sweet spot. It's not easy to find such systems. So of course the more and more scientific articles are coming up on this topic, and touching on phenomenology of science and the whole issue of the observer, which is also very important for us, because in the quantum realm it's quite accepted that the observer influences the system, and we truly believe when visitors come to see our work, they interact with the system on this quantum level, and they disturb it and interact it. And the necessity to come in touch with such sublime systems for us, for a human observer, is that you kind of get synchronized with them as you watch them, and it could be a step towards understanding this very puzzling reality that even the fathers of quantum science could not accept, and we're struggling with it. And we approach quantum physics, quantum chemistry, not from a point of scientific fascination. For us, it's the realm of sublime. It is truly the realm of the most sublime edges of human knowledge, human expression, the realm that even the fathers cannot truly perceive and understand.
When the droplet, if you can imagine that this droplet is the particle in question, and the wave in question is what happens when the droplet bounces on the air-oil interface. It creates a capillary wave. So the reason that these scientists were led to believe that there's some kind of nonlinear quantum behavior taking place is that this droplet, instead of, as one might predict, would bounce in the same spot all the time, once again triggered by the sound waves coming from below, that instead, all of a sudden, an interference pattern takes place between these capillary waves, the very capillary waves created by that same particle. And that creates an interference pattern that allows the droplet to walk or drift along the path. And, well, as Evelina was saying before, this is a segue into an understanding that had already in the beginning of the 20th century had been posited, that everything consists of waves, that it is not, that the conundrum is not that everything is either particle or wave, but rather that it is both. And in fact, contrary to the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the most widely accepted interpretation of quantum physics, there are other theories that are now gaining prominence, having to do with the idea that the waves are actually guiding the particles. And that is exactly the kind of behavior that we see in mucilaginous omniverse. But before we get into some motion picture material, I just wanted to make a note also about these different geometric rafts that you see. When the frequency is very high, you can, the droplets begin to create a very tight, very stable lattice. And the lower the frequency, the larger the intervals are between the droplets, as you can see in this image here.
And I was also very pleased yesterday at the ceremony to hear from an artist who won the Golden Nika in music that she at some point abandoned creating objects and moved into more immaterial realm. What you can see here, we are not creating objects, but we are shaping matter with energy field, with sound field. And we abandoned creating objects from the very start of our working together. And we also abandoned the use of recording media, and this is very ideological points for us. And of course, it is extremely difficult to exhibit this kind of work and to perform them. But nonetheless, we think it is important to start seeing and perceiving the world as energy fields and as network of waves, because particles, I mean, you can hear some scientists saying that as soon as we don't know what it is, we call it a particle. So particle is in abstraction, and what exists in reality are these very complex, fluid networks of energy fields and fluid media. And this is the realm where we truly work with energy and we shape matter with energy.
Yeah, something that is also known as force field tailoring.
And of course, when we will show a little video.
But before we get into the video, yeah, this is we wanted to also talk a little bit about how we got into this particular project, and we indeed had worked with acoustic levitation before. Actually, I'll jump to this slide in a second, but this was also a piece actually that was that won an award here at ours, and.
This is acoustic levitation that is also a sound performance, and you can see on the left or on the right, depending the schematics of a standing wave, that the distance between the plates or the speaker and the reflector is proportionate to the half period of the wave, and in these areas points of very low pressure are created that can trap lightweight matter. So we did this before, the work with sonic levitation, acoustic levitation, and a very interesting point. This is from a scientific paper by it's
this is
the
a group
same
in Sweden. Yeah.
same principle, but here it's not a piece of gold that is levitated, but a droplet of liquid. So a droplet of liquid is an optical lens, and because it is levitated on a sound wave, it is...
And because it is containerless, this is also very important.
It becomes an optical resonator and a lasing device. And this is a very, very fascinating phenomena and a thing. So for a mucilaginous omniverse, we decided, and at ours we'll show it for the first time, we decided to use white laser for the illumination of this little bouncing droplets. So they will exhibit this kind of effect, and you would be able to see it.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain ever so slightly what is happening in the image here, because it's indeed a very, very peculiar phenomenon. When the laser light enters the droplet, when it enters this optical resonator, the intensity of the laser coming out becomes much, much higher, up to 400 times the amplitude of the laser that had entered the droplet. And the way that that happens is actually something having to do with perhaps something that many of us have experienced in an acoustic manner. If you've ever been in a medieval or in lots of medieval churches, for example, you have this what is known as whispering chamber modes, where you can hear people whispering who are quite far away from you because of the way in which the sound bounces. Just as it bounces up there, as you can see, this kind of lossless movement of the sound along the curvature of the circle, which in the case, of course, of the droplet is a sphere. So that laser light, it keeps on circling and circling inside of this droplet, and each time gaining more and more amplitude, and also the frequency shifts. And this is something that you can see quite characteristically in the performance that we will do on Monday. We usually do not like to show
please,
videos,
if you will see the performance, leave the room now or close your eyes. But if you're not here on Monday, you're welcome to watch it. And we will do this performance with Ivan Pavlov, who is right now is here. Son is his artistic name. And this is foremost the sound performance, because the form-giving force in this case is sound.
We're just going to give you a preview, I guess, of another
just to complement the wonderful theme of this year, Ars Electronica, the origin and the quantum physics, this is our new work where we observe hydrogen clouds with white laser visualizing techniques. So we were also very interested in the original element, hydrogen. So I think we should stop.
Which also, yes, plays a very big role in the mysterious leap between non-living and living matter, when all of a sudden photosynthesis starts taking place in the seas and oceans of our planet, creating hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen going mainly back into the atmosphere, whereas the hydrogen becoming the sewing material of all DNA, of all living molecules.
Thank you very much.
I think that was, the whole afternoon session was a great demonstration of the hard work that the jury had to go through in order to select this really wide range and diverse works. So I should really acknowledge my colleagues in the hybrid arts category jury, Ronak Feren, Jens Hauser, Dietmar Offenhauber, and Daria Parkamenko. So please acknowledge them for the amazing work. Oh, and the dog is barking again. And really, you know, looking at 420 works was quite an achievement. So, yeah. And now we have about 15 minutes for discussion, and I just realized we don't have enough chairs there, so maybe we'll get everyone gathered around here. And I hope that there's some really burning questions from the audience to ignite a discussion. So we have Rob again over there.
Yeah, one for Evelina and Dimitry.
You want to come up?
I tried this one out on Paul Davis, but he gave me a very good answer, but wasn't the answer I was looking for yesterday. Observation, you say that an observer comes in, something happens. How do you define observation? Because as I understand it, physicists have debunked the notion of consciousness affecting the wave-particle experiment by using remote methods of observation with video cameras not observed by humans. So how do you define observation when we have these machines? How do you place this notion of observation? And how, in fact, did you observe what happened when a human came into the room?
Well, I would like Dimitry to answer this question, but I just want to mention from myself that we take very strict phenomenological stance. So we are mostly interested in the internal analysis of the consciousness of the scientist or the observer.
Well, observation, of course, is quite a multilateral process. You use different senses, and sometimes there are even these blurry domains between the senses. There are even synesthetic capacities, for example, and certain sharpening skills, certain conditioning can be implemented in order to allow for that observation to be as honed and as transparent as possible. But the question that you asked actually is a very, very important one in the realm of theoretical physics, because you're actually zoning in on the difference between the uncertainty principle and the observer principle. And I think that a lot of the scientific community has, makes a very, very sharp distinction between the two. And in our case, it goes without saying that any kind of observation is a manipulation. You cannot escape that, no matter how distant you are, no matter what kind of special conditions you orchestrate. There will always be there's always a conundrum that doesn't bother us as much as it does the the scientific community. Because we're
yes, on the contrary, we try to uncover the consciousness of elementary particle and interact with them, because they have past memory, they have certain characteristics that even scientists accept that we regard as consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be a kind of an unnamed dispute going on, which I sense is happening, and that I can never get a clear answer to this issue.
There is no clear answer.
Okay, there is no clear answer.
Any other questions?
I have a question for the biological artist, apparently, which is the uneasy part of the art that we've been talking about. There's a lot of discussion of freedom in that context, and we should be having the freedom of, I don't know, making the substance to make the birds shit with soap, or shall we have freedom of injecting us with the animal's blood? This apparently is a moral question, then, which raises issues of not having a permission from animals or this kind of. So, in political terms, it's not. My question is not moral. My question is more political. How do you see a perspective of that, and whether this might have an impact on art as a whole, being repressed by governments just on the basis that, well, basically the next step is making sex with animals legal. So apparently that provokes governments to inflict restrictions on arts in a wider scale, probably. What is your opinion on that, and how do you see the perspectives in this direction?
Well, I think Tour should answer too. I think it's very different to act on animals and to act on yourself. I mean, this is my point of view. I think Tour will have more problems with ethical committees and politics in some ways. I mean, if anyway I am attacked by the government because I did something wrong with my body, which can be, that would be for me a good time to start a fight with the government, which is okay. I mean, this is a part of the whole work. So this would not be, for me, a way to go into restriction. It would be a way to go to having people agreeing or not, so taking more awareness about what should be done or not with the body as a social body. But Tour should answer.
Generally speaking, exploring animals in order to whether it enhance your awareness or whether it's not so it's not a personal question, it's more about exploiting another species without their permission. And that question will rise from politicians very soon, as soon as they become aware of that. And also, I can easily see a situation where an amateur, what you call it, synthetic biologist, works in the local McDonald's and see what you're going to be shitting next morning after you went there. So there's a certain danger that will be acknowledged by politicians, and there will be restrictive measures coming against art in general, I think.
Are you vegetarian? No. Oh, yeah.
I'm eating meat very well, and I don't mind killing animals.
No, but I think you're right, and in a way I've sort of uncanned that as well, in a sense that the main sort of constrictions I found on myself were my own sort of ethical constrictions. So I don't think if the politics of pigeons and the sort of nice things about pigeons is that they already find themselves in this ethical grey zone of most people don't really like pigeons, even these pigeon fanciers that sort of love their pigeons to bit. Whenever there's a non-performant pigeon, they would just turn its neck and it disappears in the pot and they just eat it. So they're already sort of in an ethical grey zone, and as far as I think my own sort of ethical constrictions, I'm very aware of sort of what I want to do on these pigeons and what I don't want to do. But those are sort of my own ethics. That's not a political thing. In terms of the political things, I don't necessarily think that the main political questions around synthetic biology are, at the moment, about what's going to happen to what can we do on other species or not. I think the main political questions are a lot more about sort of who's going to be able to do this, but also who will own it. One of the main things around, I think, the sort of reason why this sort of work ought to provoke these debates is because, you know, what if we can all patent existing bacteria, which we can already? And those are sort of, I think, the political questions that need to be dealt with. And I think, therefore, it's kind of important that work like this raises these. But I don't necessarily agree that the political question is around sort of what can we do to other species.
I also feel I have to answer that because I think, you know, in a sense I represent the most institutionalized version of artists working with biology. And I was approached by the Australian NHMRS, which is the National Medical Research funding body, that were rewriting the guidelines for ethical, both human and animal research ethics. And they wanted to single out, as they basically said, it's time now, as more and more artists are moving into those types of fields, that we would also kind of have a special reference to artists. And I advised them, and luckily that happened, that artists shouldn't be singled out. The political thing is, and my sense is, that the only time where artists would be stopped from doing stuff is when they actually exploit or expose things that are already happening elsewhere. You know, I don't think that artists are going to be in the forefront of those types of things, but I think that artists are acting already and will act more in the future as lightning rods, basically grabbing attention to stuff that's already happening elsewhere. And when you talk about, for example, the idea of mixing humans and animals, this is stuff that is happening now, and there's more and more discussion about the notion of creating humanized animals, animals that either have quite significant of the genome, human genome, or they have actual cells and organs that of human origin that are developing within them. So we basically put human embryonic stem cells within, or human stem cells within a developing animal embryo, and the idea is that to have an organ that would have almost 100% of their cells, human cells. Now this is stuff that is happening at the moment within the scientific context, and I believe that, you know, if it happens there, we can't restrict artists from doing so as well. And the notion of what's the betterment, what's the good of humankind in the context of how far we're going to engage with other species should be distributed evenly among professions. And my concern again, and let me emphasize, is when engineers are going to take over and do that, we are going to live in a very miserable world. So, and there was a question over there.
Yes, thanks. I have a question for the artist who has been intervening in the financial system, and my question really is, has that project had any concrete effects in terms of people politically questioning the way that states, capitalist states, finance themselves through debt and through bond issuance? We're told in the debtor, in the more economically afflicted countries, and I come from one of them, that we can't repudiate the debt to the bondholders because there are all these poor people who've invested in pension funds who have bought the bonds. And yet, we're also told that the pension funds have crashed, and you know, there are going to be all these impoverished pensioners. So the question arises, who is actually making money out of the financial crash? And I'm wondering if your work, which I think is really pertinent and effective, but is it having a political effect in terms of people asking these kinds of basic questions? I mean, I'm a member of the Green Party, and I imagine if those Green Party people get in, they won't be repudiating the debt. They will be playing the game the same as their predecessors have played it. So, yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, has it had a concrete effect?
Also ich antworte mal in Deutsch. Also ich glaube.
Okay, I'll answer in German. I think it would be arrogant to say that my project has been able to do what so many others have not succeeded in, but
one thing is important. That's an important concern of mine. It's shedding light on the relationship between the individual and the state. Everybody focuses on what we hear on the news, on the bankers, on the state, the government, but it's also a question, what can I as an individual do, even if it's in homeopathic doses, that we can overcome this feeling of powerlessness and assume our own responsibility. We tend to overlook the fact that with every cent, with every euro you spend, you are taking a vote in a certain way. And the discussions which I refer to when I'm on site and when I'm talking to people, I find out that many things are changing, that people's awareness is changing. People are coming to realize that they can do something themselves. They can look at things differently. It would be arrogant to think that you do an art project, even if it lasts for 43 years, and through that project you turn the entire political economy upside down. That's certainly not the case. But if you look at small autonomous cells, at swarm systems, I think if many are doing the same thing at the same time, you can change a lot. Money is a strange thing. We all handle money, we all use money, but we don't really know what it is. Hardly anybody is aware of the fact that money is to do with belief. And if I don't believe in this instrument, which is money, if I don't trust money anymore, it is of no value anymore. If I write down on a piece of paper that I'm going to invite him to a cup of coffee when he comes to Berlin next time, this is worth much more and much more trustworthy than if I say, well, I give you €5 and the €5 will be of the same value 5 years from now. So money is to do with belief and trust. I refer to the exponential interest and compound interest effect. I think when I use this image, I make people understand how the system works, and that debt is a component implanted in the system. If we had a different system, we would have a different problem, probably.
We need to end. Unfortunately, I think we can continue discussing forever. But let's thank all of the presenters of today and the translators over there for the very great job they've done. And thank you so much.